Okay. So, shall I start, Chantal?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So, good afternoon, guys. I am Leonardo da Vinci. I work for Aubay. I'm going to be holding this webinar today for you. As people who are arriving, they can get the things already on track, right? So today I'll try to show you guys a little bit to show you guys how the architecture in front end is, at least in terms of showing you the little points that get involved in constructing this, because it is a little bit different of what we do in other softwares, right? In backend software, for example, which is so to try to do that today with you, I'll run through all these points, basically explaining you a little bit of giving you some reasons on why is that even important, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what does the architecture involves in the front end that is different from what we usually see, right? Again, this division of traditional architecture, that actually doesn't exist. It's a division I'm doing in my mind just to make it easier for me to separate the themes in here. When you're going to talk about the CSS and all these things that always get involved when you're thinking about of architecture in the front end, but it's usually not very well discussed in architecture books, right? And then we're going to go through the more traditional way of what? Anyone want to say anything? All right. And then we go through what traditionally we talk of architecture, right? And finally, we have some sections for questions if you guys have some. So to begin with, why do I care for architecture to begin with, right? Well, this is basically what you're going to find in Google when you go search about architecture, but that has a reason to be, right? If you think about, okay, I think everybody already, we all in this industry already had to work with some big software that keeps growing and growing and growing, and the pains are more or less the same. In the end of the day, guys, the idea here is to diminish, to put those pains in a box and try to deal with them separately. For example, we all know that after 6 months of coding, whatever is it that you're coding, you probably do not remember what was the thing that you were doing, even if it was only your code, it was only your project. But now imagine with dozens of people. So basically, what maintainability is doing in here, maintainability here basically means that you can look to the software that you did, and you can recognize the pieces of it with some already preconceived ideas, right? So you have some formal architecture, you read about it. Oh, so this architecture, you do this and this and this and this, and there's all these blocks, and then you look into your code and you can recognize those blocks. So it basically makes the time for you to understand what you're reading, understand what you're seeing, lesser, smaller. And this basically makes it easier to maintain. At some point, it's virtually impossible to work in a big company, in a big software without any architecture. I mean, you can start an architecture from your head, which is possible, and I'm not even discouraging, saying that it's not possible. I myself had worked with some of those things before, and as long as you document everything and everybody understand it, it can work. But the point is, it doesn't matter that much the architecture you're doing. Some architecture is better than none for most cases, right? And if you do it right, it's going to be easier to scale and easier to flex. And of course, if you can maintain things easier, if you can scale them easily, you can have reduced risks, right? Because you can say, hey, I can know more or less how much time it will take to fix that bug or to do that new feature, right? So it's reduces the risk, enables collaboration. Sometimes and it was collaboration and performance and all that. Hello, Carla. Someone turned on their camera. I hope it serves as encouragement for you all. So, well, this is basically the main thing. So why do we do that? But I would like to give you some more real thing about that. I'm going to give you an example that's actually extracted from the Clean Architecture book from the Robert C. Martin, which is, look, I really like this example because it's a generalized example. It is a real example, but not with the real names on it, of course, that Robert worked in his years. It's nice to notice that this guy has more time on making software than I have of living, so I like to take his words for some stuff. So he was basically presenting the growth of a company that got to be leader on their market share, on their product, whatever the product was. This company started out with one person, probably the owner, doing things alone, and ended up with thousands of employees, right, over 8 years. So basically, this is the growth of the employees. So it was a pretty steady growth. Like everybody would like to see this in their company. And then this is the size of the product over the time. I don't know exactly if it's about lines or size in blob or binary code. It doesn't matter for the sake of this presentation. What matters is the product was growing like blazing fast from the first year to the second year to the third year, and then we can see here clearly an asymptote, right? Sounds like it's not increasing anymore, but look, the size of people, the amount of people being pushed into the code, into the development, and the amount of work being coming out is clearly, right, having a not very good trend. If you see the cost of the product, it becomes ridiculous, right? Of course, the person working alone or with very few people, the productivity was maximum, so it was really cheap to push new cycles of the software. But as the years went by, it became very, very expensive. And this other graphic is basically a densification and a conclusion of those other three, that is productivity basically asymptote zero. It's crazy for me to look at this and think that it's a real world scenario, right? Long story short, what was happening in this company, according to Robert, is that they had this massive product increasing very rapidly, with a lot of features being pushed all the way because they were the leaders. So they wanted to keep being the leaders, and new features and new features and new features. And nobody was actually taking steps back or thinking how things would grow over the time. So at some point, the code was such a mess that nobody could make anything fast, right? Everything was a pain to do. Every new bug was a pain to resolve. And the result of that was that they come to the conclusion that we all had arrived at some point in our lives, which is, oh, we have to redo that, right? So, well, now there is a war in the company because half of the people has to make the new code, but then the old code is what paid the bill. So the old code has to be maintained, and nobody wants to stay working in the old code because what a headache, right? So, well, as far as I know, I think they actually lost the market share over the time, but it doesn't matter. So I hope this is reason enough for us to care about what we do before we start doing the actual coding, right? So, okay, it would help for us to define architecture, but honestly, I don't think that is consensual in between the people that have been studying this for more time than I have of living. So I'm not going to try to define it here, because what matters for us in this presentation is basically the goal of an architecture. And the goal, basically, guys, is try to make whatever is it that you're doing take as less resources as possible. Human resources, basically us, right? Because truth being told, we are expensive people. So let's start it, right? Let's start talking about the things that involves architecture in the front end. That is not very, very common in, like, you will not hear about this if you're making, I don't know, some security software, some backend software. It's specific for the front end, and it can become pretty messy and really make your life harder. So let's talk about CSS, right? It's always a pain. I see this in most projects I've been in. CSS can grow a monster over the time. So there are some strategies to take care of it. I should have said what those things means, but it's just an example. So you're going to see in here. So basically, so we have a lot of strategies to deal with CSS, right? We have object-oriented CSS. We have inverted triangle CSS. You know, all of them are just showing to you, hey guys, this exists. You can look into this next time you're going to do something from scratch, or even try to make it better in your company. And the goal of them is all the same. All of them have the same goal of trying to make CSS more predictable, more maintainable, right? How do they do this? Let's get two as examples, just so I can show you that it's possible to do, right? Let's try with inverted triangle, right? I think I should have put this image first, sorry. With inverted triangle. I'm sorry this is in Spanish because it was the best image I could find, but I could not find this in English, so I'll try to translate to you guys if it's necessary. But the idea of the inverted triangle CSS is basically have a hierarchy of CSS where whatever is on top of your hierarchy has the biggest effect, the biggest magnitude, as is in here, you know, but it is not very specific. We're talking about specificity in the CSS, you know. But if you do, as you go further, as you go deeper in the architecture, it becomes more and more specific, but less effective in broad terms. What do I mean being practical? Yes. For example, I'm not going to go through all of this, all right? Just going to explain you the pinpoints, what it matters. For example, let's say you're making your design system for example, for instance, and then you're going to have to define your colors, then the main colors of the enterprise and all of that. What do? You're probably going to have a settings, right? You're going to have some sort of color palette in some. If you're using SASS, for example, you're going to have a lot of variables. Those variables are probably going to be in the settings, right? Because it affects the entire project, but it can be easily overtyped and can easily be changed in some specific component because you want for whatever reason, right? On the other hand, let's suppose you have an object, whatever is your object, a button, a card, whatever that appears in your website, and you can define it. Okay, so this is the card for the music of my website. And then you're going to put the CSS in this layer. But for whatever reason, you have one music in specific that, I don't know, it's a shiny music, it's a new music. And then you have this new CSS that is for shiny cards. And then you put in your components on your utilities. Because when you put them together in your HTML code, they're not going to fight each other. You can use them like freely. Imagine how nice it is, because me myself, I've worked a lot with these problems of, oh, this particular property is not working, I have to put important on it, right? So the idea of making this layered CSS is precisely not to have to be fighting against those importance and all of that thing. I'll give an example of how that works in a minute, right? Because I would like to merge this concept of ITCSS with OOCSS. Again, just for example, because I can show you that you can merge ideas. The OOCSS works very well in standalone if you want. For instance, you could use the BAM2, which is just another way, what is the name in English? Another format, right? And another pattern. But the OOCSS, you're going to treat your CSS pretty much as an object-oriented language, right? It's very nice for us programmers because we're used to do it. So you can divide everything that you're seeing in your screen as if it was object-oriented programming, right? But there are some tricks to do it, and I'm going to try to tell you which they are. For example, it is recommended that you separate your styles of skin and content. What does that mean? Structure and skin, sorry. Why? The skin would be, for example, again, in the example of the card, the skin would be the shiny card that you have this special music that is super new and booming outside. So there is a shiny card. And then you have the card, which is the structure. Every card has this structure. in the practice, these structures basically margins, borders, you know, all those things, strokes, for whatever reason that you want to put in your card. And the schemes are, well, colors, effects, animations, all those things. You can separate them. Why? Because then you can say like card, it's a normal card, and then you have a card that is a special, and then you say card, and then shiny, right? So you have two classes, as if you're doing as if you're dealing with an object, as if you're dealing with a TypeScript or Python or whatever, right? This is the idea. But now, by the things I've been trying to do, I would also advise to try to keep the idea of single responsibility. It helps a lot because, I mean, you're already trying to do OO, right? So try to keep this in mind of one class does one thing, right? And it's not that you cannot use IDs, but it kind of loses the idea, right? You are making classes for a reason, and then if you use IDs, you have to have a good reason to break the pattern like this. So I would say avoid IDs and try to work with single responsibility, as in POO, OOP. All right, I'll show you a little bit of how it works, right? Keep in mind that it was just an example that I got, and it is, of course, over-engineered, but that was kind of the idea. I will show you why in a minute. Okay, let's see those two pieces of code here. Example, let me get this one and this one. This was literally something I just found on the internet. You know, I went to find some code randomly, just so I could get this code and apply the OO on it. I'm going to show you some live review. Oh, wait, what? Okay, so this is the code. So pretty simple, right? There's nothing special about this. Just a page with two divs and a form, two buttons. Nothing special. I found it on CodePen. Literally, someone just did it, and they just installed the idea. And this is the original code. See the original code here, right? Forms, none of that. Oh, no, this is the original code. Labels without, as you can see, it clearly has less things than mine. So mine is over-engineered because you're talking about a single page here, not an entire project. That's another thing. Lots of those architecture doesn't make sense if you apply to really small projects. So sometimes you're better off with simpler strategies. The problem is the idea of this presentation is exactly to talk about those projects that keep growing. Mainly every big company has one of those, right? So, and then the CSS. If you see their CSS, let me put one side about that. Since we're talking about a single page, we can kind of relate here, right? So left call, and if you look at this, you can say, oh, so probably this is the left call, right? But I mean, let's be honest, section, last call, form, in a real big application, I mean, in the application I'm working right now in my enterprise, that would be horrible. We would not know anything that is happening. That is literally hundreds of buttons, right? So how many buttons is this affecting, right? Which of those? So I made an example doing like this, okay? So we can have, so now we have a name for our button. So it's not any button. It's a button of the sign in. Oh. Not only, but these are the button in specific. It's even a button of a CTA. CTA is a call to action. Is something. Oh, I will go to this unknown user in a moment. All right. This is a button that has an attention caller, right? So let's see how I did it in the CSS. Right, so here we have the button with the structure, right? It becomes a pointer, it has a border, it has this and that. And then, well, but if it's a CTA, then But then it has a different color, it has a hover, which is a horrible hover because I am not a designer, sorry. But you kind of getting the idea, right? Let me make a pause and yes, unknown user wanted to say something. Or perhaps no.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I did.
So it was just a question about when you were talking about the cards and have a different class for it. So basically, it's like you can have like 3-4 different cards and have 2 classes with different colors, so you can use them both together.
Basically, if you have like 3 cards and every one of them it has a different skin, has a different look, but they are the same structure, that's simply perfect for OOC, the OOC, right?
Yeah. Okay. Cheers.
Yeah. Thank you. So basically, another thing that I would like to show you here, but I think that everybody heard this at some point in their lives, is the mobile first strategy, right? So basically everything that you're doing in here is considering the mobile version of this website, which is, let me try in here, but it will not fool me today. See, well, basically this behavior is really simple, right? But it has a lot of ways to do that. But the ways that I advise is to follow the mobile first strategy, which is to try to you do first what everything that is in here is actually talking about this tiny guy here. That is obviously unnecessary, just an example. But it's talking about this tiny guy. And then as you move as you get your screen bigger, you use the media to put whatever is different from what was before in here. It is harder than it seems to do that, guys. Okay, it will get tricky at some point. I would also advise to use some mixings to do those things, right? To keep them standardized, because let me tell you, if you, in a large project, this number would appear like God knows how many files. So you better localize this in only one page, on one place. And the place that I would advise you to do that would be precisely if you're using this kind of architecture, you're going to put them in the settings or in the tools and the generics, depending on how you're thinking your strategy. Probably in the settings, right? That's the idea. Are we over with this? Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Just raise your hand, just like our friend did over there. Okay. So, this is something, guys, that I find quite interesting, but to be honest with you, me myself, I've never really done as much as I would like. There's actually very little. I read some stuff and that was it. But I think that we should care a little bit more to be interesting. It's just like 1 minute and something, 1 minute and a half video. And instead of me trying to explain something I don't understand very much, I'll let this video talk and then you guys can search it later. All right. Let's see. If you're not listening, tell me. Are you listening? Check this myself. No, I think now I can guarantee you're listening.
WCAG, WCAG, WCAG. The way you say it varies, but the rules are universal. Did I say rules? They're actually guidelines. Insert a witty pirate joke here. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are a list of rules, just go with it, for making the web available to everyone. This may seem daunting at first, but I'm going to walk you through it. You'll often hear or see things like, you must be compliant with WCAG 2.1 AA. But what does that even mean? Let's break it down a little. WCAG has a standard, like 1.0 or 2.1, and a level, that's A, AA, or AAA. Here at Soaktide, we like to say that A is must do, AA is should do, and AAA is reaching for the stars. So when the legal requirement is WCAG 2.1 AA, it means it's using the latest standard, 2.1, and level AA, the middle one. AA is tougher to master, but still well within the reality of the web today. All the guidelines are numbered, like 1.4.1 use of color. This is a single A requirement, and it covers a fair bit of ground. Inside that guideline are success criteria. One such criterion is links must be distinguished by more than just color. We have a video on that topic in this series, but it also covers things like not using color for instructions, like red fields are required, or making visuals like pie charts with no labels or patterns to discern the segments. See, that wasn't so bad, was it? Now go tell your...
Yeah, so basically, okay, what I like about this that I would like to go deeper myself is that the accessibility guideline is not only for like accessibility talks about if you can see or if you can talk or anything like that. Because if as you saw, he was talking about like the colors, and it makes a lot of sense to not use the colors to indicate stuff, right? And this makes your life as a user harder, and you do not necessarily has any disabilities. So it can be useful for everybody, I guess. So I think it's cool. It's just leaving it there.
WCAG, WCAG.
Okay. So that's another thing that appears a lot in my life, trying to do front end at least the best I can, and it's always testing, right? To be honest, this is also something that I would like to go deeper in my own studies, because I feel like I did less than I would like, than I would love to do, you know. And well, so again, I'm just going to present you guys the concept they exist, how are they used, and move on. You can basically get those two strategies, right? I think that everybody that ever searched testings, you came across these things. I'm gonna explain you real quick what is the main idea behind them. The TDD, which is test-driven development. The idea is basically to try to test every piece of what you're doing. In the end of the day, it's gonna come down to unit testing your functions, but trying to make this more, you know, more like abstract. I think of a motorcycle, for example. I think it's a good idea. A motorcycle, and then you're gonna run the engine, and then you have that tiny thing that shoots electric signs inside the motor so it can make the combustion, right? If you take the entire motorcycle out, and then you get only that little thing that makes the lighting, and then you put your other wires, other power, you know, all controlled by you, and then you light it, and then you see if it's gonna light, if it's gonna light up. If it's lighting up, oh, it's working. If it's not lighting up, oh, it's not working. This is basically unit testing. You forget the entire motorcycle, you fake everything else, and then you only test this thing. The idea behind behavior-driven development, BDD, is precisely the opposite. Not precisely the opposite, but somewhat opposite, which is, in the same example, it is like, okay, I will not dismount everything. I'm just gonna get this system that I'm gonna, do this in the motorcycle, accelerate it, and then I have to see the same piece of mechanism behaving as it should, basically lighting up. So I push in here and I see this lighting up, and then see, I'm testing the entire mechanism here. What is the advantages and disadvantages? Well, from my little experience in this, the TDD, it's nice because every developer has to take care of it, and it's faster to develop in this way. So everybody start coding, and then if you make the tests, and then you start developing to try to pass the tests and all those things. What is the problem then? Is that it tends to lock your code a little bit more. It has to be written. It should be written before you rewrite your code, right? So if you ever change a function because it's not necessary anymore, because you made it return a different value for whatever reason, because you changed the strategy of that component for whatever reason, you certainly have to rewrite the tests. For the BDD, you have less of this problem, right? Because you can even write the code after, which is not indicated. It's indicated that you write before. And it tests the entire system if the entire system is working. So you can change whatever you want, as long as the behavior stays the same, the test will pass. Well, so behavior-driven is better. So I tend to like the idea more, but look, there are problems too. Because if you see a problem, for example, in the motorcycle thing, if you see a problem, okay, this is not lighting up as I expected. Nice. Now where is the problem? Is it in the wire? Is it in the accelerator? Is it in the thing that I'm in my hand? So you have to take everything out and go searching. On the other hand, if you're testing only the little thing and everything that you're doing is controlled, in other words, if you're training, if you're doing only in your function and unit testing, if there's a problem on that thing, you know the problem is the function or never really far from it, you know? So it's really your choice, but know that those things exist. And I think that is actually important in here is my postmortem on this thing, because as I told you, I have not done as much testing as I would like in my career, and I always see the same problem happening, right? As this thing starts growing, because again, all this talks about things that grows a lot, project that grows a lot, and they grow. People will start getting, you're gonna always have this problem, which is you finished your cycle, everything was working, right? You implemented like 3 new features, resolved 2 new bugs, and you test everything. You send to the PV, the PV or the PO approved, oh nice, super working, congratulations. And then you merge everything and put it in production, or for your test team if you have a test team dedicated, and they, hey, that thing broke. What thing? We did not do anything on that thing. You know, something that you did like a month ago. Sometimes it's little things like, oh, the color had changed, the position of the button is not as it should anymore, but it will happen, and it's really annoying. It drags people back and drags the team back. It's always because lack of code, lack of code coverage, lack of testing. So this is my postmortem for project without tests. It always happens like this. And depending on the industry you are, it's even like it's a no, right? You will not put a project out without testing. So you have to think about one of those things eventually in your life. Keep moving. All right. So this is an argument I would like to make. I decided to put a point on the presentation only for that, because I find it very important, which is, guys, readability is better than performance in most cases. Of course, there are cases and cases, and the back end, it's not always the case. Even in the front end, it's not always the case. But let me tell you, in my entire career, I saw very, 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 very little cases in the front end where you would choose performance over the readability of the code. Because, guys, the reality is that we, as developers, are way more expensive than the computers, but we'll get that. See, just see this example with me, right? It's a simple code, right? It's not doing anything relevant, just for exemplifications. So you're making a list of market foods in here, and as you can see, you have 2 potatoes 2 times, right? And garlic and fruit and blah blah blah. And then you have a counter for the potatoes. And what is this code doing? Okay, so it's running the entire, right? The entire list. And if the item that I'm running is a potato, oh, so I count the potato. Okay, nice name, potato counter. And then the thing here changed for chips. Okay, now end this. Right, so I have the market, then I filter for potatoes, and I have the amount of potatoes. And then I map, so I get basically all these things, and okay, if it's a potato, now it's a chip. And if it's not, it keeps being what it was before. Come on. You put your eyes in here, you know what it's doing, but not in here. Right? And this thing is for sure less performable, you know, less efficient than this one, because this is only going through the array once, and this is creating a new array and all that. But honestly, in a real world scenario, even in a cell phone, how much time would that cost me? Like 0.0001 millisecond. It really doesn't matter. So it's way less expensive, objectively less expensive, that my colleague 3 months down the line come to here and see like in 10 seconds what I'm doing, then coming into here and taking God knows how much time to understand what I was doing, right? Because again, this is a simple scenario, but it's never that simple, right? So yeah, just to say again, we are more expensive than the computers, right? If your code is not that performatic, and you have to spend like $300, $500, even $1,000 more in the AWS web system, okay, this is not very cool. You could be spending less money. But then if you need to contract a new developer to deal with the code base because it's too complex. I'm gonna assure you it's gonna be way more expensive than paying $1,000 more for the AWS, right? Okay, so now we come to the harder part of this presentation. I see I'm running out of time. It's a pity. Anyways, which is the code for real. For lack of words, let me see. For the code itself, when you go to the TypeScript and all that. Me myself, I'm a fan of this architecture, but I've been trying to apply this in the front end for a while, personally with things I'd like to do, and it's quite complex because I feel like Robert Martin was not thinking very much about how the front ends are made nowadays when he wrote this book, and no wonder because he wrote this book before the front ends get that gigantic as they are nowadays. But I think we still can use a very nice concept of them in a proposal I'm going to make to you guys later. Because in the end of the day, when I see most people talking about the front end architecture, they tend to be always around MVC, MVP, MVVM, all those things. People that use Angular is already using some sort of MVVM naturally. And okay, those things are important. They can make your code better and easier to read for sure. But okay, let's suppose you're making React, and then you're going to separate your file into two files, and one is dealing with the logic, the other one is dealing with the rendering. Ooh, but then what? You're going to have thousands of pages, right? One after the other. How are they going to interact with each other? Right. So this componentization is not enough, right? So we have a lot actually, a lot of architecture. I took one to give you guys an example because it's one that we are using nowadays in the BMW. But of course, there is hundreds of others. The idea of the facade, why is it being used nowadays in BMW? At least in the project I am, because in the project I am, it has like literally, I think it has 100 and something people right now working in the same project. It's gigantic, and this thing offers this very, very, very nice advantage, which is you can break your software as big as it is in really tiny places, So you can have like thousands of components breaking down into sets of 10, 20, 30, not more than that, right? So it kind of little projects inside your project. This is amazing. Of course, it doesn't come cost free. Any architecture comes cost free. It's gonna have your downsides. I'm gonna try to show you both things, the good and the bad, right? So we're gonna talk about facades and I'm gonna show you an example of facade. And I'd like you to pay attention to two things: the flux of control and the flux of the data, because this way of looking into this is a very, very clean architecture way of looking into this. That's why I showed clean architecture before, because it has tools that you can use to understand the stuff. And in the data flux, you have those mappers that I don't see people doing as much, and they can make your life harder if you don't use them. I'm gonna explain you why. So basically, the idea of the facade is you have a something. In Angular, it would be a service, but it can be whatever is it you're using. A service that is going to do everything that you want to with the external world. So you want to consume an API, whatever is it, a WebSocket, you can always ask for the facade. The way that people usually do that is through managing state. So hey, facade, change the state, load my user, right? And then the state, oh, okay, load my user. So it does everything that loads my user means, goes to the backend, gets the user, and then updates the state. And so the administrator can watch those states and see that they changed, right? So the flux in here is, okay, let's say I have a tree, for example. I have a tree of files in my website, and then I click on a file and I have to open this file on this stage, for example, right? So I click in the tree. When I click it, the information is going to go up the hierarchy until it gets to the administrator, and then the administrator knows what to do, all the logics that's going on. And that's for the facade for the data. The facade does the thing, and then it goes back from the server to the facade, possibly passing through mappers, and then go back to the components. The good thing is something that got triggered in here can update the entire website if it's needed. And what is bad is that you're probably gonna have some level of drop drilling when you're using facade. It's kind of unavoidable at some point. at some degree. Let me show you guys an example of this working, right? Like for real. Again, hope you guys see me here. So see this file in here, right? So this is basically an Angular project, okay? I'm going to show you what it does before anything else. So it's pretty simple. It's basically a website that has a card with a value in dollars, and then the quotation for the day. This is live. This is consuming some free API, right? So this is very simple. So what do we do? How do we do this? Is what is interesting. This. How do I get that information working? Okay, so I'm going to show you in here that I have, right? The main component has nothing. So we have the feature, which as I told you, this is where the entire facade lies. And if I had more features in the website, I would be adding feature, and even if just every one of those features would have an entire ecosystem of facade inside of it, right? And that's what gives power to this architecture, because everybody could use it. So everybody can do whatever they want. Which one of those, right? So one entire team can be working in here, entire team can be working in the other feature, and so on and so forth. All right, so let me show you this. So here we have our administrator and our facade. Let's have a look at the facade real quick, right? You don't need to super understand this code if you're not very familiar with RxJS and Angular. You may not understand very well, but fear not. Because it doesn't matter very much. You just have to understand that this is a state, and then we have how to get this state, right? So these are the main coin and the currencies. So the two states that we use, the main coin and the currencies, okay? And then we have a dispatch. Everybody that have ever used some state-dependent website has seen some dispatch before. And it has, hey, you're gonna call it, hey, look. Right now, our action can only be this action, but it could have more and more. I'm going to show you. So we have an unknown with the actions, but we could have here as much action as possible. In this project I've been working, I told you there are some actions there are some facade that had literally like 30 actions. It's quite big. Anyways, so the dispatch will see what is the action and perform whatever is that the action needs to be performed. In this case, it goes to a service. I don't remember the what is the name of the thing, but it doesn't matter. It consumes in the internet some stuff. That's what matters. It consumes in the internet some stuff, and it makes all the treatment. And here comes the mapper that I told you. Look, this thing comes from this website, from this API, in their format, in a really crazy format. But in the front end, I literally need two data. The name and the value, right? So I made a mapper, literally from the mathematics that you have one thing and you transform in another thing, one set of things and transform in another set of things. Like this. I'd like to show like this. Okay. So we have this information in here. So this is very simple for those who don't know TypeScript. This basically means that we have an object with a key and the ratio, which is a number. But if you see how it comes from the backend, I think I can show you. It comes from the backend. Let me see in here. F5. For instance, it comes equal. That's nice, but it could not come equals. But anyways, for example, like it has its tiny data in here. And if I did not do anything to this information in here, I would have to be accessing in my entire website, always accessing it like this, like currency.data dot whatever I wanted, right? URL, for example, the Brazilian currency, right? But what does data mean, guys? What I like to do, at least in my code, is that it sounds as much as a book as possible, in the sense that you can look at the things and can more or less tell a story of what's happening. I load the exchange rate, and then I go get the quotations, and then I, you know, so if I have a .data, what does data tell me? Nothing, right? And this is some full example, because it can get really ugly. The data set can be gigantic with a lot of stuff, and why do you need all that, right? So make your own life and your developer's life easier. Make a mapper, basically cutting everything to what you need, right? In this case, this mapper doesn't do much, because this data is really simple. It's basically constructs an object with the ratio with the data of the currency, right? Which is the value. So this corresponds. This corresponds to this little mapper in here, right? It's going from the facade to the administrator. You could even have others in here if you need, from the administrator to the others, but it's less likely. Possible, but less likely. All right? And then you have a tab, which is basically a map, but for side effects, right? I could have done this inside the mapper, but try to separate stuff. Again, try to tell the story. If it's a mapper, it's transforming one thing into the other, not making side effects. But in here, you are making side effects, right? And then basically updating the state, the actual state of the facade. When I do this thing in here will fire. And what that does is to make our administrator that is watching these things to do something, right? So they can update, they have the opportunity of do some logic. I just use this. I made another mapper just for example, just to give you an example, just for you guys to understand this naming. DTO is data transfer object, and PTO is presentational object, right? So as the data goes through the layers, because at the end of the day, this is a layered architecture. As it goes through, it has to change to a format that is more convenient to that layer. In our real case in here, the PTO is actually not really needed. I just it just for the sake of the explanation, right? So yeah, we map yet to another format just to show that we can do that if we need. Sometimes we do. And then the administrator will pass this for their children through bindings, right? Here's the binding. Hey, this is the currency, this is the ratio, right? All those things. And then this guy in here, you get this through inputs. And in our case, it does nothing. It basically gets the thing and it show in present. But it could do all sort of things. It could even have, I don't know, some, for example, I could add in this website, which, oh, did I stop to share? Did I stop the sharing? I think no, right? Are you guys still seeing?
Yes, your screen is still up.
Yeah,
okay,
yes.
thank you. Yeah, because the team stuff gets right in here, and sometimes I click on it by accident. Anyways, so I could, for example, put an input in here, and when I type whatever I want in here, right? When I type whatever I want in here, it would fire an output for an information saying, hey, I would like now to do all this again, but for the euro for 45. If euro was 45, what is the rest? Right? So how would I do this in this architecture? I would put in here an output. Again, for those that doesn't know Angular, don't worry. It's basically informing the father that something changed. But put an output and say, hey, here is the value that I want. It would come directly to the administrator. The administrator would have a function in here saying whatever, right? And for example, get new currency value, whatever. And this would eventually fire. It would eventually do something like this, right? Something like dispatch, and then we're going to call a new action with whatever name that we would do. And this dispatch would know what this action is and would perform the job, update the values that would go all through, and then the cycle closes, right? This is quite nice because this gets simple. It's really, really, really easy to expand this structure. It has some problems though. You can see already the prop drilling problem, right? I can pass it through from the facade to the administrator, from the administrator to the card, and it's only this tiny website. When things get ugly, you can have like 3, 4, 5 levels of drilling in the properties, because it's important that the sons of the administrator do not access the facade, right? Because otherwise things can get quite messy. Another problem that I see in the facade that I try to solve in this example, because I think it's solvable, but you will not find that very easily around how to solve this in the internet. I searched, believe me. It's not very easy to get the feedback. What do I mean? Okay, it's very simple, right? Because when you send an information to a server, some request, you get the request back, and then you can do something. I don't know, show error message, treat something, sign out the user, do something. So it's kind of trivial in normal programming, but then when you use in facade, it gets a problem, because the thing that knows what to do, which is the administrator, doesn't know how to do or when it's being done, because it's asynchronous. So when you call the dispatch, the facade is talking to the backend, and if some error happens, it can fire something to show a toaster or something like that, but not much more than that. So a solution that I found, give me a minute, I'm thirsty. A solution that I found was to make this, to use some PO and make this, I forgot the technical name. It's when you put a function with the same name, but receiving different parameters, and then changing the return to an observable. So if the administrator wants, for whatever reason, it can subscribe to the return of the dispatch, and then it has the opportunity to get the result of whatever was made by the dispatch, and then do some logic if it fails. But again, this is not perfect, and this is only my idea, right? Well, guys, pretty much that's it. I know I've been through blazingly rapidly through the CSS and all that things. So if you have any doubts, or if you can see anything, if you want to see anything more in detail, now is the time. Anyone? You go back to something or not?
Not much, but I just have. There was a segment you went through when you talked about is it readability or simplicity is better than
readability? Yeah.
I like this quote. Readability is better than performance. I don't know. Is this something you found? Because this is the first place I actually saw this written out clearly, like somebody actually stands by this. When you go outside, it's always, oh, iterate, improve O of N, improve the time. You know, from Android, when I started doing Android, I didn't bother much about performance and all that. It was, oh, learn Android APIs, build Gradle, learn all this stuff about Android. That was more important to me than all of this. But as you grow, interview more with companies, talk with other people, and realize, oh, there's a lot more emphasis on, mostly as you go up to bigger companies, you realize, oh, people talk about performance a lot. And this was like, I think this is the very first place I've seen this written out clearly. Somebody stands by this statement in a public place. Because people always say, oh, no, performance first.
Okay, I'll give you a real world example, right? It was basically some problem that I set to myself, and then I have to face it, something that I did. You know, when you look at the code and say, oh, how the freak did that shit? And oh, it was me. You know, there was this kind of thing that happened to me, because we had this table in this website that was that was really hard. It was a really hard thing to understand. It was really hard because the business was complex. The business was complex. What was happening in the background was complex. We were using some table formatter that is paid, so you don't see very much in your life, right? Like AG Grid, for example. But the thing is, okay, so I was doing that. What was the problem? The table was pretty complex. There was a lot of information like that. It was a tools for engineers. But then if you do the thing is, when you reload the page, how much things are gonna appear that was appearing in our testing when I was coding? It was like 20, 30 rows, and it was already too much. The engineer was probably going to see only like 50, right? But then at some point in the coding, I had to make some search in this table for a property, for whatever property, right? So okay, I would have to go through the table, get whatever I wanted, and then go through the table again, searching who else had property. So I calculated in my programming mind, and I thought like, oh, it's gonna cost me like the big O of this algorithm would be n elevated to I don't know 2 or n. I know, but it was exponential. Oh my god, it's exponential. I have to search for searching, and no, I'm not gonna like that. What did I do? What do I do? So I get the table. I make a quick function that would transform the entire table that was an array, right, in a hash table. With the hash key is the thing that I want, so I can now search in constant time. So I get the guy I want, and I do, okay, so this is the property I want. Now I have the hash table. They say, oh, so this guy has this property, this guy, right? So it was super efficient. But then later, someone told me, hey, what is this code doing? And then I was like, oh, but that's clear. It's just, and then I was reading. Okay, to be honest with you, I could realize what it was doing like in 10 minutes because I wrote the names of the function right and all that. So it was nice. But then he told me, why don't you do like this? And then I wrote what he said, and that's because this is way less efficient and all of that. And then I was looking into what I just wrote to explain to him why not to do. And then I realized it was only 2 lines. 2 lines. I had to I had to write an entire block of code and then another function to use in this line of code to do what I was doing. And all of that could be reduced to 2 lines. And in the end of the day, honestly, like how many data would that table see in real life? 20, 30. Okay, let's say 100, 1,000. Like really, let's say, yeah, 1,000 lines in a big O of exponential complexity would run for what? 100,000 loops. 100,000 loops is a blink of an eye, right? So it simply doesn't pay off. Okay, so I reduced 100,000 loops to 1,000 loops. But yeah, both are going to run in less of 30 milliseconds, right?
I think I agree with this. Readability comes in more handy because if somebody on that team, let's say the person that designed that very efficient feature or array or loop or something, that person goes away and then nobody else understand how he did that thing that's so efficient, then there's a problem because then you need somebody else that can understand
exactly. And this can be way more expensive than letting the machine to calculate a little bit more. Of course, we work with engineering, so there are cases and cases, and some cases you cannot afford to do that. Let's say we're working with the API of Netflix, receiving thousands of but this is another case, right? This is a case where performance is the issue. But in the front end, you hardly ever see this in a case where performance is the issue, right?
Yeah, I think
usually when we get to that point, it's because we are doing something wrong. Yeah. Any other questions, guys? And thank you.
Okay, so sorry, I like talking a lot. Don't mind me. I'm like that. I saw MVC, MVP, MVVM. I didn't know you guys use MVVM on the web. We use that on Android as like the default for us now. Big thing in the space.
Actually, Angular is kind of the full MVVM, to be honest. It's by default, it's MVVM. Of course, and if you're using React or Vue, it's way simpler. You can actually use nothing if you want. But I would advise you to
we go with
inspire
MVVM.
yourself in one of those.
Yeah,
I myself used MVP already with React.
Nice. I like your session. Well done. I didn't say that earlier. Well done.
Thank you. Well, if you guys have not any other questions, or if you do, please tell me. We have time yet, so.
Madrid game is about to start. Nobody's asking any more questions.
So, if everybody is okay with it.
Thank you so much.
So if everybody's okay, nobody has more questions, I will finish the presentation.
Yay. Obrigado. No. Obrigado. Put it A. Obrigado. They always put it that way. Obrigado. Well done, man. Thank you. It's interesting.
That's it. Thank you, guys.
Well
I
done,
see.
Leo.
Thank you,
This
Carla.
is from Brazil.
I see some of my friends in here. Feels like home.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, I am at work.